and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of the Drachmas and Denarii podcast. As always, I'm your host, Sam, joined today by Antoine. Antoine, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Sam. How are you?
Good, good. It's been an exciting time over here. I just graduated from college, so I'm just enjoying my time off trying to learn some Latin.
Uh, Congratulations, a noble pursuit.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's a lot harder than I thought it would be, but I think it'll be worth it here in the end. Just slogging through right now, learning all the declensions and whatnot.
Absolutely. Sounds like a, a fun way to spend the summer.
Exactly, for me at least. Well, cool. Yeah, we thought we'd get together today and discuss the state of the ancient coin market right now. We've had a number of interesting feature sales come up recently. We've had Numismatic Ars Classica, NAC AG. They had I think they do this once a year, but their big sale, springtime sale, auction 138. Then we had CNG, who didn't do their Triton, but their, I guess, semi annual other feature sale. The lesser tier one, but still quite nice. Then we had Lloyd do another feature sale and a nice sale from Nomos, including lots of Greek fractionals. So we thought we'd take a look at these four sales, maybe discuss prices, see what's going on, and if there are any trends we notice, we'll talk about those. Well, cool. We can start, I would say, maybe with the biggest sale that happened so far, and that's NAC 138. And so at NAC, they had a number of incredible coins. And I would say two stand out here that are the ones that hammered for the most amount of money. That's lot 155 and lot 802. These two coins involved I believe the Pentacapeum Stater is the only one in private hands, so a piece that's not quite unique, but if you're a rich collector, this is the only example of its type you can own. And then what is certainly unique, a Probus gold medallion, I think unique just in terms of artistry and the history behind it.
Yeah, so these are definitely the two elephants in the room at NAC. And the Pentacapium Stater, I think it broke the record.
Yes,
It would have, even notwithstanding with the Eidmar drama that we
exactly.
may or may not get to at some other point in the future,
Yeah, we can maybe give a
even still, this broke the record by
yeah,
a
indeed.
sizable margin.
I think that sold for maybe like 2.5 million British pounds, and this being now
Yeah, so around
4.4
3
francs,
million francs, and this is just, yeah, blows it out of the water.
which is surprising. Didn't this exact coin sell a while back for not that much? I guess 2012. It's been a long time since. I guess the
Yeah, I
market's
think in
evolved.
2012 it sold for just a little bit less than the Eidmar, so around that 3 million mark. And that was the Prospero sale, which had quite a few fairly high hammers for a number of reasons, including some very active collectors at the time. Um, well, I guess there's some very active collectors right now too, obviously, as we can see.
Yeah, it would seem like it. I would say I would imagine Knack's pretty happy, the consigner too, with that price. I mean, that's pretty much the best you could possibly ask for, breaking that ceiling of the most expensive ancient coin ever.
Yeah,
We can
I
give it.
certainly would be.
We can check out the video here too. It's a beautiful piece. You can see why. Maybe it doesn't quite justify the price, but you can tell it's an exquisite piece of great artistry, and it's well preserved too.
And it does, I think, importantly come with a fairly extensive provenance, which is
Exactly.
something that,
Sort of
for
bringing up the
example, certain other
Eidmar.
coins have lacked.
Yeah, this one I think it said 1934. Maybe I'll
Yeah,
look at it in the
34 or
description.
5 from the Hermitage, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. Very nice. And I guess a small correction. So it's not the only one in private hands, but this says the finest. So either way, a very rare coin and a nice example at that. Yeah, you can see
Yeah,
here.
from memory, there's only around a dozen or so of these extant, and they're roughly split 50-50 between museums and collectors. But this is certainly the nicest one.
And the price reflects that. But I would say, I mean, I don't know if there were worries about what happened with the Eidmar. I'm not sure if our audience would even know the whole backstory behind that. I think we're going to be doing a couple episodes covering sort of the story behind that. But just for anyone who doesn't know, there was an Eidmar Aureus a while back that sold. And anyway, that broke the record for the most expensive ancient coin of all time. Let me pull up a photo here. I think it was this one here, yeah. So anyway, this Eidmar Aureus came to market and sold, but it turned out to have a falsified provenance and was sold under dubious circumstances. It got seized by the I think New York State authorities, and repatriated back to Greece. So there was some concern about with such a high profile coin being seized that maybe that would impact the market with people bidding. But I would say obviously not within a 4.4 million franc coin. It would seem that the actual buyers out there, as long as they have a provenance, they're not going to care about that. It's not sort of dampened the mood of the market.
No, it wouldn't appear that it has. And I guess one of the things about this coin is it seems to come from a different sort of collecting standpoint than the Eidmar. The Eidmar is a nice coin, but it's not the prettiest, but it is very historically significant, obviously, and then having one of 2 to 3 known gold examples would make it extremely rare. But in this case, this coin, there's not so much to it at first, history-wise. Like it's from a smaller Greek city at the edge of the Greek world. It's a very nicely executed, like three-quarters facing bust, which is difficult to capture. It's got a lot of artistry. It's got some history there, of course, but I don't know that it has 4.4 million francs plus fees worth compared to the Eidmar. Like this is enough to buy a dozen Eidmar denarii.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely does showcase that, collectors definitely value, I guess, artistry and rarity to a great extent still.
And I think it might be to the different kinds of collectors in the sense of I feel like the Idmar, even though I'm sure lots of collectors wouldn't mind owning this, obviously, it's sort of marketable to that history collector, the one who wants to own a piece because of its significance. Whereas with this stater, it's more of a piece of art at that point. It's an art appreciation. And I think in general, just the market shows that the art market is a lot more valuable, has a higher ceiling than historical artifacts in general.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment because Panticapaum, like, let's be real here. Who's heard of Panticapaum, especially if you don't collect ancient coins?
Yeah, no
I
one
think many who
has.
do haven't as well. So, yeah, but it is extremely artistically well executed here.
Definitely. And then the runner up in terms of maybe looking at numismatic significance versus art, I would say this is a beautiful medallion, but just in terms of artistry, it's sort of lackluster. Maybe that's controversial to say, but I would say this sort of captures that crisis art style in terms of it's not photorealistic. It's got a certain, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a caricature, but the imperial busts aren't so lifelike. They've sort of been affected by the times. To whereas even though you've got a large medallion that's above a normal denomination, that obviously has some splendor to it, some magnificence. Just the fact that it isn't that beautiful in terms of artistry, I think also maybe limits that price compared to the stater, where you can see, even though it's not connected to a Roman emperor, even though maybe it's not connected to a military event that's known, this coin just has pure beauty and pure art, whereas the Roman medallion, not so much.
Yeah, well, I would agree. It's very intricate in terms of the details put into it. It's extremely intricate. Look at his robe, look at the scepter, the club.
But I don't
There's
I
a
don't
lot
think that
going
makes
on
it
here.
necessarily fine art in that. I mean, obviously, I think there's a certain
No,
inherent beauty
no,
to it, but
that's
I
the
would say
thing.
like just the level
There's
of art
intricacy,
executed.
but it's not as artistically well made.
Whereas like many
It's
Byzantine
not as
coins,
realistic.
I own some trachis. They're very intricate, but that doesn't make the art beautiful in an inherent sense. You can be detailed and not beautiful. So I would say this. I don't know. I'm not saying it's not appealing. I'm not saying it doesn't look good. At a certain level, there is artistry there, but compared to some of the finer Greek coins, I would say it doesn't hold much up.
No, that's for sure, and especially the figures on the reverse is sort of where that becomes very clear.
Yeah, look at those
They're a series of
legs.
circles just kind of connected together as opposed to being the form of actual soldiers. They're
Exactly.
well done, but they're certainly not on par with what you get at the height of the classical era.
And I would challenge, like, for example, this stater, try to find an example in silver or bronze that's this numismatically important or just this beautiful. You'll be hard pressed. Although you look at this Probus portrait, if you color that gray or bronze, you couldn't tell the difference between that face and a normal Antoninianus. Obviously, the
I
Jugate
will say
bust
this
changes
for
that.
Pentacapaum. There actually are silver drams which have a three-quarters facing bust. It's not quite as nice, but it's close. And we might actually see one of them. There was one at Lois. We might get
Oh,
to it later
nice.
on, and we might be able to see whether or not this should be worth 1,000 times as much. But yeah, we might cover that.
And that would be an interesting point of comparison in terms of how does artistry present itself on a gold flan versus silver. I mean, you hear some collectors say they prefer to have silver over gold in terms of artistry. I would say I'm rather impartial. I think gold has a certain, I don't know, a certain base attraction to it. Just it's, for lack of a better word, shiny in its base sense. But I feel like there is a sizable minority perhaps of collectors who might prefer silver over gold, anyways, not considering price.
Yeah, you're right. And I think part of it, at least when it comes to Roman coins too, what I've personally found is I think the dies are just better executed for the gold sometimes. You get some much finer portraits for the aurei as compared to the denarii.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but with Greek, maybe not so much. A lot of the
No, that's the
tetradrams.
thing. With Greek, yeah, it's hard to beat a nice tetradrachm, and they, generally speaking, aside from the neons, they didn't really make anything decadrachm sized in
Mm-hmm.
gold, so.
Well, cool. Yeah, that's just kind of an overview of two coins at NAC. We might come back later and look at some other ones, but we thought we'd kind of show off one coin that's important because it now broke the new record of the most expensive ancient coin out there, and the second just to kind of compare and contrast what a high-end Roman and a high-end Greek look like and why they might differ in price.
Actually, I did want to bring up just regarding knack. The rest of the sale, there were a few different sections. They performed fairly well, but there was a Roman Republican denarii section that, instead of having $500,000 coins, it was fairly mundane, sort of run-of-the-mill coins, and some of them did very, very well, but quite a few sold for, three
Yeah,
figures, like a two, three, 400 francs.
which for a
So there
NAC
was a
feature
little bit of
sale,
something for everyone.
it's a bit surprising. Yeah, why
Yeah,
don't I just
absolutely.
do this? You can see here, 80 franc
Yeah,
coin, 100
80
franc
francs
coin, 110,
next to a
110.
4 million franc coin. So,
Well, I haven't gotten too much into it on the podcast, but you know this, Antoine. I'll be consigning some coins to NAC this fall, and I suspect I'll have something similar in terms of kind of when I went through that consignment process. What I'll be consigning is not going to be anything especially expensive or nice, but I think part of the appeal for NAC was having a built collection that kind of shows and flushes out the entire series. And so I think that maybe what this sort of exemplifies for NAC is not just so much that you have to have nice, expensive coins, but also the dedication to completing a series and finding unknown types. And sort of once you've built that, your entire collection might add prestige that kind of exceeds its actual face value.
yeah, it's
I don't know if
greater
that's what
than the
happened
sum of
here, but
yeah.
I would assume that's probably the case.
I think the other thing with these coins is they're all very nicely toned, and most of them have at least semi-official provenances to the 70s and 60s. So that definitely does help.
Yeah, here we go. Just randomly choosing one. 1983. It's a decent provenance. But yeah,
Absolutely.
that certainly helps. Well, yeah, I say maybe we can look at Loy now and see what we don't find here in comparison. So actually, I'm kind of curious. This caught my eye browsing through the first time. You hear a lot about numismatic dyes on coins and sort of the rarity of them. A lot of times it's going to be hard to authenticate, but NAC here, or excuse me, Loy here offered I think it was from Croesus, a trite,
Yep.
so a one-third
Lydian
state or
Empire.
die, which is, I mean, if true, I would say that's extremely new, or if real, if authentic, it would be extremely numismatically significant to have a die like this. I mean, that places you within half a century of the very first coins ever made, and you've got supposedly an authentic die. I don't know enough to really quantify either way if it's real or not, but I think that's an impressive offering, and I guess the price shows that.
Yeah, this is a tough one to really comment on beyond what you've said. It's probably the sort of thing that could be fairly easily forged. It doesn't look all that complex. And I guess in the shape that it's in right now too, it's probably a bit worse than it would have been when it was first made. So that makes it a little bit more difficult again there too. If you look at the lion, it's very worn down. So either extensive use or, who knows, perhaps not the most authentic. But it is very, very significant if it's real, which it may well be. And it's very interesting too to have something like this.
And I would assume as well, I mean, it's not always the case, but if you're spending this amount of money, I would presume you did your research. I would hope
You
you
would
did
hope,
at least.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, they certainly have a lot of interesting coins here. Let me know if there's one you want to click on and see in particular. I'll just scroll down if not. But tons of nice, just coins all over.
Yeah, Loy's sale seems to have been less of a prestige sale and more just a standard feature, and they have quite a few very strong hammers across the board here on very nice coins.
Yeah, certainly. I know the Byzantine section did very well. They're not going to be this high in price, but a lot of those coins, I would say, went for maybe two times what I would be willing to pay.
Yeah, the same thing happened with Roman Republican. It was a bit of a letdown, but it happens.
But yeah, overall, a strong sale. Let me look up. You said they had that dram in this
Yes, I
sale.
think
How do you?
yeah, it'll be a little bit lower down.
I'm gonna go ahead and.
PANT.
Okay.
That's all right.
I'll see if
PANTI.
this if that pulls it up. Okay. PANTI.
I. Panticapion. Yeah, I think that should get you there.
Oh wow, here we go. Interesting.
Yes, we have a variety in the silver, and
Although I would say, just at a glance, I don't find these as impressive. Just gut
I think I
reaction.
might have mixed it up. It was Nomos that had
Oh,
the
Nomos.
one in this
Okay,
style. Yeah, we'll get to that too. That's all
cool.
right. But Lloyd did have
We can
the
pull that
one that
up too,
went
real
there for
quick.
6,000. It's quite nice. It's a little different.
Um.
It's in their auction 27 or 8.
Okay, auction
They had a
27.
series.
Oops, hold on. Let me just clear that. I don't know if I can sort by price at Nomos. Their website's not that great for such a, I don't know, large auction house. You'd hope they'd have better software. They don't though. Same goes for Loy.
I found it. It's in 28. It's lot 1137.
1137. All right, let me just scroll down real quick.
You can even compare 1136. It's another gold stater, but a different style.
Well, I know C&G had one too of the sideways facing. All right, here we go. Oh, nice. Yeah, that is. I would say that is decent.
Yeah,
So
obviously not the same condition,
what's
but
the
similar
flan
style.
size difference? I don't think C&G or I don't think NAC actually puts the flan size, which is a bit annoying. I would be
No, they normally
curious
don't.
if
I'd
there's actually a
imagine it's
size difference.
significantly smaller since it's even with the lighter density of silver, lower density, sorry, it's, a third of the weight.
Hmm.
So I think the ratio is around 1.5 to 1, so it should be around half the size.
So you can see here, I would say obviously with a larger flan size, you'll have more space for artistry. But then again, you're looking at what I think the Nomos example was 5,000, 5,500 versus
Honestly, that was
4.4
a
million.
high price for that too. You can get the type for really this should have sold for under 2,000, I feel. For 5 you can get nicer.
I will say the hair seems less complex, less ornate, just at a glance here. Of a big difference.
Absolutely, and that's sort of what I was saying about. I think they put in more effort across the board in gold dyes in the ancient world. If it was going to be used for gold, generally it was a little bit heavier, so you could have a more robust, larger dye. But I think they just put in more effort as well, made it a bit more intricate.
Well, plus just the size you're limited to. You've got less room for detail. But yeah, I agree as well. But once again, is that difference worth it? I don't know. Maybe not to me, but I guess there's at a certain point, if you want to own the finest known of this type, of that design, I guess you have to pay up. Well, cool. We can return back to Loy and scroll through. I guess here's some more of that type. Not the same type, but more silver busts. Do you know, is that a headdress that Pan has got on?
No, I think it's a
Oh, here we go.
wreath.
Yeah, wreath.
Yeah, yeah,
I almost prefer that design though. I think it's a cool look. The iconography is neat.
absolutely. It relates him to Dionysus, the ivy leaves and the grape bunches.
This is a bold portrait though, in terms of just an expression. I would say the hair is less complex, but I feel like in the style it's done, you almost don't care.
He looks very wild. It's
Hmm.
like fraying out at the edges, whereas this one's much more put together.
I wonder, is this? It's not archaic, but is it an older design in terms of when it was issued? This one just seems a lot more, I don't know, poignant, for lack of a better word here.
I think they have dated it to be a bit earlier. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with the works regarding this series, so I don't really know where one fits against the other. But yeah, it does seem a little bit
It almost seems
more
melancholy
archaic.
here. I don't know. It just seems
Hmm.
a little bit
It's the
somber.
eyebrows. Yeah, his
I think you're right.
eyebrows.
Yeah. But yeah, overall a very nice coin. But yeah, I think Loy. Loy in general had a pretty good sale. Let me go back to sort from top to bottom so we can scroll through. Decadram
Oh,
seems
we
pretty
actually, if you
reasonable.
go up just a little bit, just above this decagram,
Hmm.
maybe a little further. No, sorry, it was further down. My bad. It was just
No
below
worry.
the decagram. There it is, the Smyrna dram for 26,000. That is an interesting coin, fairly rare. And the reverse, at first glance, it looks fairly generic, your average Zeus or Athena sort of Hellenistic reverse. But
Definitely.
it's a man holding a scroll from a
Oh, is that
city
Homer?
that identified, yeah, with him. It's Homer.
Interesting. Wow.
Yes,
That's very
I love
neat.
it.
Yeah, I would not even realize that. I would have scrolled right by. That's awesome, though. Yeah,
There are, for those of us that don't have 26,000 plus fees to spend, there are bronze versions of the same coin that you can get generally for 1 to 200 euros. So definitely not bank breaking in the same way.
so I'm assuming silver is pretty rare. I don't think I've seen him in silver before. I've seen the bronze
Yeah,
issues, but yeah, not
you
in
see them
silver.
prop up maybe once every 3, 4 years, not very often.
I would assume it has a decent provenance then too. Perhaps. Well, never mind. Spoke too
Oh no.
soon. This is the Savica backlog here. Didn't quite make it to the bidder auction. Got sent to Nomos or Loy though. Just kidding. Shouldn't joke about that. Anyway, yeah, it's a nice coin. I will say they made Homer seem very athletic here. I guess in my mind, I kind of pictured him as an old man, but who knows? The
Maybe
Greeks were on that
Greek life
Mediterranean
back in the
diet.
day was, yeah,
Jacked at
kept you in good shape.
65.
Who knows?
But yeah, I'd say overall, I mean, a pretty strong turnout here. Price is as good as you could hope, unless you're a buyer.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, interesting
Ah, and that
selection overall.
diploma, it actually didn't do quite as well as I'd
I
imagined.
think that
This
was
one
opening,
here,
if I recall. I think 16 was, yeah,
yeah,
16 was opening.
yeah,
Although then again, I mean, you can get the fragments for so cheap. Maybe just not that big of a market.
yeah. Well, Adrian, our co-host, he has two fragments that he purchased much cheaper than this. I think somewhere in the order of 2 to 300 euros.
Hmm. I think he paid like 150 and 350, and they were published
Yeah,
ones too, which is neat.
that's true. Although this does look almost complete, so I guess that adds a little to the price there.
Who knows? Maybe he sold his car and won this. But yeah, very neat. I mean, definitely museum grade.
Well, you
They
can
don't come
practice
much
your Latin
better.
on this one later if you'd
Yeah,
like.
exactly. I'm gonna embarrass myself. I've been doing ecclesiastical Latin though, so not quite the same. But of course, similar. Just vocabulary is different. But yeah, very nice. But yeah, I'm curious. I know some of the Byzantine. They've had some interesting pieces. Just what I collect, I'll go into it. Yeah, I was watching this. Well, actually, there was one at Nomos that was a lot better. Obviously, not at that price range, but they were opening at 1600. It is a silver trachea of a rare despot. So he wasn't quite an emperor, but this was Michael II, Komnenos Dukas. So he ruled in modern day, I guess it would be Macedonia, perhaps today, the rough equivalent. But this is an interesting issue. I will say I wasn't entirely convinced this specimen was authentic. Difficult to say, but let me pull up the Nomos one just for comparison here, just so we can see the coinage of Michael II. They're known for being just they have incredible detail. They're actually very well executed. Got a wonderful style. So here's the example at Nomos. You can tell here once I click on the photo and get these pulled up together. The difference in style here. I mean,
Oh yeah,
compared to
the
the Nomos
obverse
example, it
right
looks
there.
almost like a barbaric imitation. And plus, if you look, just the flan density, if you see on the Nomos example, it seems to look like pure AR with a bit of gold inside. So that would be because they're electrum with a small amount of gold trace amounts. But it was a very fine metal and most likely done for ceremonial issue. And you can tell here, like I said earlier, we said intricacy does not equal beauty, but you can tell there's certain effort put into these designs, lots of attention given, even if it's not the most beautiful. You can tell the execution of the face and whatnot. Lots of care was given to it. Whereas the Loy example looks like chicken
Certainly less
scratch.
so.
Definitely, it kind of makes no sense as to why it would be so poor, unless it were either a contemporary imitation, which once again doesn't make sense because these coins didn't circulate at least as far as we can tell. And then also just the flan, you would expect a pure AR, almost Electrum flan. This reminds me almost of a Billin coin, though, not quite pure AR, but mixed in with bronze. So I don't know. I'm suspect. If it were me, I would not have really bid on this coin. But I did look at the Nomos one, but it went way beyond what I would have wished for. At opening, maybe I could have snagged it, which I think was like 1,500 or 2,500, 1,500 opening, but whatever. Oh well.
I have to say, I'm a little surprised at the prices. Obviously, like we saw 4.5 million franc Greek coin just earlier, but yeah, there's clearly some very dedicated Byzantine collectors out there too, because this isn't the sort of coin you'd immediately think is worth 10,000 francs.
Send them my way for the Nat consignment. But this is like pretty much, I'd say, almost the absolute ceiling for late Byzantine. So pretty much, I would say Michael II. He's historically significant, important. Didn't issue very many coins, and the few coins he did issue are executed with a style well and above anything else in the era. So it's kind of like a very small select issue that's much better in quality than anything else from an interesting ruler. It just sort of drives the price up.
Yeah, understandable. I guess I can understand where Constantine the XI's coins get the prices they do. There's a much broader appeal there, I guess, historically, religiously, for
Mm-hmm.
a number of reasons. Like, I would collect one if I could. Um, but yeah, that's very interesting. It's a
Yeah, I
nice coin.
guess with that price range, I'm not quite going out to Constantine the 11th. He's sort of excluded, sort of a one-off. Just any whale that comes by is going to want to buy one of his coins. They get absurdly expensive. But yeah, I'd say Loy overall pretty strong. They did have some beautiful coins. I like this one. Uh, Maybe the best I've ever seen, just in terms of Byzantine. Full legend. It looks like it was cleaned pretty harshly, but overall, very nice design.
Yeah, a very complete reverse. I've never seen a legend on one of these, let
Yeah,
alone the entirety of a legend.
yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I guess the price sort of reflects that too. 3,200. Yeah, I won an example of this type a while back for I think 200 euros. So I didn't pay very much. Let me see if I can find it just to compare. Maybe talking about like a price ceiling of how a very nice example might draw a much more extreme price. Let me get the SEER number off this. 2159. So this is what I won. I think I paid like 160 euros for it. I'm not going to sign in now to get to it, but you can tell. I mean, there's decent
Oh, that's
detail
still quite
here.
nice. That's a good reverse.
A blurry
Yeah.
photo, but it was actually quite nice. The only issue is a cracked flan. I don't know if you can see my mouse right now, but sort of what I'm circling, a bit of a crack there, and then yeah, some other
I
issues.
actually think I prefer the style of yours a little bit.
Yeah, it's
The
quite
youthful
nice.
companion there is he's just rendered a bit better. I'm not sure who the figures are. I presume the emperor and a companion or something to that effect.
Saint Demetrius. And if you look, so
Ah,
this is
okay.
kind of blurry, but on this example, you can see what they're holding there. It's a model city. So where they ruled from was Thessaloniki.
Ah,
So he's kind of presenting the city to the ruler to say, I deem you worthy. And then above, you can see the Manos Dei, the hand of God blessing
yeah,
too.
yeah. Okay,
So
interesting.
it's a neat design. Byzantine coins, not the most beautiful. They have some fun iconography, though. They certainly push the boundaries on what you might find. Yeah, overall, strong sale there. We can go to C&G now. And so C&G actually sold that same stator type, but with a normal sort of half profile bust compared to 3/4 facing. You can see here this sold for 160,000 compared to NAC's 4.4 million. Is that difference worth it? I don't know.
Yeah, well, there's actually one at Nomos too of this type that sold for 100,000, and then there's the one at Knack that sold for 240,000 as
Mm.
well. So quite a bit of a range. It's 1136.
Oh, cool. Thank you. See if it shows up. I'll just Google it. Hold on. Oh, nice. I might actually prefer that to CNGs.
I think so, yeah. If I was in the market, I would have gone for the Nomos one.
What sold first? I'm curious. The dates here. Let me
I
look.
believe it was Nomos.
Really
Nomos first and then
interesting.
CNG. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Knack, well, I think Knack beat them both out, and obviously the extremely high hammer of the facing one might have helped a little with the other. But yeah,
Let me see
I
how
think it
much.
should be a bit further up. It was
Uh,
240 from memory, 240, 260. There it
oh, here
is.
we go. Wow. Ooh, that's a different style as well.
Yeah, yeah. There's the
Oh, that's
two
very
main
bold.
styles. One that's like the extended sort of beard and the long lines, and then the Knack one that's a little bit more put together and sort of flattened.
I think I might prefer the Nomos one overall, though. I like that angry bust.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and the long beard coming out from his face all the way to the edge of the flan. It's very nice.
I think I see this. It sort of screams Greek to me. Just, I don't know, the facial features, the way they're composed. Sort of reminds me of the marble statues you might see of Heracles or whoever else. But yeah, overall, very nice. I think the Knack reverse, though, I might prefer that. I think
Yeah, it's a very
less important
ferocious
here, but
griffin.
it's very nice. And then CNG, I don't know.
Not a fan. Yeah.
It goes to show, though, how even similar coins can have wildly different prices here in this range. Once the whales go at it.
I guess that's another aspect of the market is did the CNG one sell for too much? Did the Nomos one sell for too little?
Hmm.
It's sort of tough to say, but there's quite a bit of variability, and you just have to trust your gut at some point.
I guess one thing we didn't look at was provenance. Maybe one has a no provenance here. Never mind. Spoke too soon.
And GC, that's unfortunate. Actually, let's see the Nomos example.
Yeah, so this one, Knack has at least, I mean, it's kind of dubious, but I would assume they've got a receipt somewhere. 70s to 90s. Let me go back to Nomos.
Looks like the Nomos one is from CNG fairly recently,
Okay, What was that lot
2 years
number?
ago.
1137? Is that what
Uh,
it was?
36.
36. One off. Ooh, 2021 provenance. Wow.
Actually, I
Oh,
wonder what it sold for at CNG now.
this
That's
says
another
struck
question.
from the same dies, not the same
Oh,
coin.
same die. Sorry, I misread that. I
So
saw it as X CNG.
no provenance on 2 out of 3. Pretty
Hmm.
epic. Well, I guess that might explain too why Nax went for so much more, even not going off the different style, which might be more desirable. I don't know.
Yeah,
But yeah,
in light of
interesting
recent
overall.
events, I would definitely want to ensure my coins had provenance. And I don't even live in a country where that's generally been an issue in comparison. Certainly, if I
Hmm.
was a US buyer, I'd want like
Extreme
bulletproof
provenance.
pre-memorandum provenance at the bare minimum. But yeah,
Yeah, who knows where the buyers are from?
exactly. Might be somewhere in Asia, somewhere else in Europe where it doesn't need to be exported, even locally in Switzerland. We don't know.
Although odds are, probably at least one of these is going to an American buyer.
Of the three, yeah, I'd bet it one probably
Which
has. It's not
Nax
unreasonable.
provenance, even that wouldn't cut it.
If it was verifiable, it might.
But
It might
late
be.
90s, 80s wouldn't do anything. It would have to be what, pre 75 or 70?
I think it depends on the coins. It depends on whether or not. So where would Pentacapium would be Crimea? So I guess technically Ukraine. So whether or not they deemed this significant enough to request its return.
For the war effort,
370s
request it
should be
back,
good.
resell.
370s would be what you'd need if they were thinking of a return, since that's pre-UNESCO. So I think it's 1972, January or March or something like that.
So odds are this doesn't.
Otherwise, memorandum-wise, I think they signed it in around 2013 or 14 when Russia obviously invaded initially and annexed Crimea. So you'd want something that's, I think, pre that, or it has to be 10 years before, so pre 2004. So I guess if there's a photo evidence of it being from the 90s, you should probably be okay.
Hmm. Well, yeah, interesting though. Those are things you have to consider once you get to this price range.
Or you could keep it in a free port and just not tell anyone.
Hmm. Well, so here that's interesting. Talking about Constantine the 11th. Here's an example of a coin that would have pretty much zero artistic merit by any definition. Macaroni art, but It's got history at
Historic
least.
significance, yeah. And it's got provenance. It's a hoard find. It's a published
I
hoard
think they
find.
all
That's not
are.
bad.
I think every single one is.
Ah, I see.
Just at a
Okay.
glance, I'm not aware of any that aren't. But I mean, I don't know the series too well. But usually they're horde based. I think maybe like a couple auction houses might have had one or two that weren't, but for the most part they are. I'm gonna bite my tongue on any jokes there. But I think this might. So there's actually two different series of this. I don't see CNG mentioning it, which makes me think that this might be the lesser of the two interesting series. So one was struck, at least it's theorized. They have two different types of Constantine. The first is a very, at least in comparison to other issues, it's an artistic design. It's well put out. It's got nice strikes, nice flan weights, all that, or nice flans, nice weights, correctly struck to the standard. There's a second series that's struck with less artistry, less control, more variation in weight, etc., etc. And so they theorize that the first was struck at his wedding coronation. That would have been in 1448, and then the second was struck during the siege. And I would just guess, going off of the obverse here, that this would be a wedding coronation issue. And so, obviously, in terms of this type, if you make that distinction, usually you would want the siege coin, right? If you're going to buy it for the history, you would want the one that was actually minted and used to pay troops in
Of course.
1453.
Of
And
course.
what
Yeah.
also kind of intrigues me, CNG doesn't mention either, which makes me think that it's most likely a wedding series. Then that's not
Well, I
maybe
think
what
it
you would
would have
want to
been in
highlight.
their interest not to mention that this isn't from the siege if there's some debate there.
Definitely. I'm just kind of glancing through here. I don't see anything about them claiming when the coin was minted. This is as part
And
of
to
this
be
effort.
clear here, this isn't necessarily unethical on CNG's part. It's not definitive. This
Well,
could well
and I
be
don't know.
from
It could
later
be
in his
it could be a
reign.
siege coin. I'm
But
just saying, from what I remember, this
yeah,
seems awfully nice, which would then sort of
yeah.
bring the question up.
I
Usually
guess
they
it's what would you do as well? Like, would you explicitly say this is likely not from the siege, or when that possibility remains, would you just leave it? Because they've listed the range, 1448 to 53. Then they talk about, I think, both events there, the coronation and the siege in the lower paragraphs. So I think,
well
fair
they
enough.
claim it was likely struck during this. So as part of that effort,
Yeah.
coins such as this rare example were minted to pay the soldiers.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay, yeah.
So I don't
Well,
know. Although, of course, it could even be the opposite, that they're so conservative and wanting to not give anything away that they're not going to buy into the whole theory and just say it was minted by him. That's all we conclusively know, which is fair. I think this series of like wedding versus siege, it's not definitively proven that that's what happened. We just all we know is there's two different series of different execution qualities. One's much better than the other, but we don't really know the context beyond that. So it could be they're all siege or none of them are.
who knows, even spitballing, it could be some were made in anticipation of the siege and the others were made during it itself.
Definitely. So once again, I could kind of see CNG also, in fairness to them, maybe just being extremely safe versus morally dubious.
Actually, on the topic of siege coins, there's another one from another very historical and significant siege here.
Mm-hmm.
If we go out, I actually don't remember the lot number, but it should be towards the tail end of the auction.
At
Sold for
CNG,
significantly less. Yes, at CNG. I think it would be under early medieval, most likely.
was this the Jerusalem one? The
Yes, that's the one.
And so I've
Yep,
seen that's an interesting one too, where it's hard to actually
there it
prove
is.
is that from that siege. I don't know if I buy into the theory wholesale. I tend to be more skeptical, especially with this amount of money.
Yeah, it's fairly similar to the other Latin Kingdom types from the era. I think the main difference is that the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is thought to be depicted on the reverse. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know if that really is conclusive in saying this is from the Siege of Jerusalem in 1187. If it is true, though, obviously this is a very, very cool type.
Yeah, I think part of that is we have primary sources that say coins were minted during the siege, and it's like, well, of all the coin types we know, this one is most likely to be that coin. It's kind of, I don't know. Then auction houses run with that. Therefore, it must
Yeah.
be. Now they sell it as that.
But of course, to counter that, there's also the so-called Nectanebo bronzes, which are really nowadays thought to be from the second century AD in Syria, Roman Syria. They have this like I believe it's a goat or maybe it's a Capricorn leaping above a scale like a Libra. And yeah, for the longest time they were like, this is Egyptian, it's like the final pharaoh. local pharaoh of Egypt. It's Nectanebo, and this is the hieroglyph meaning gold. And now it's been pretty much debunked. They're just Roman provincial bronzes that probably aren't worth more than 50 euros.
That's awesome. It happens. Yeah, it's a cool type, but once again, if you can't prove it, is it worth the price? Although I guess if you got enough money, what's 8 grand? If you're a whale who can spend 4.4 million,
Oh, absolutely. If I was that guy, I'd be buying this as well. Me on my budget,
yeah,
gonna need something a bit more conclusive.
definitely. Yeah, it was a good sale overall. I think I had a few targets actually, but I got blown out of the water on all of them. Quite sad.
Yeah,
One,
I was underbidder on a few things in the Republican section. It didn't do maybe as well as I would have expected. Um, but no, overall it was a good sale, but not as overpriced, I'd say, as Loy. And yeah, maybe lacking some of the real showpiece coins that Neck had, but very solid offering.
yeah, I think in general. Hold on, let me do this real quick. I think in general I try to buy at a price where I could resell and not have to worry about a loss, which excludes a lot of sales. I would say C&G prices seemed fair. I just wasn't comfortable going to what the lots went for. Whereas Loy, it was ridiculous, 2 to 3 times what I think a fair valuation would have been.
Yeah, I agree. And Loy tends to do that in their features. Tends to
Which,
be more difficult to win if you want to stay on a strict budget.
yeah, well, let's not go into that. Never mind. You know what I'm talking about, don't you?
I've only won a single coin from Loy's features, and I think it was like relatively fairly priced, but on the upper end. Um, yeah, that's the one time, and that was for 1,200 francs. It was not one of their nicer coins. That's for certain.
So these are the lots I was looking at. Let me pull them up real quick. It might be fun for the audience. I don't know. Let
I
me
actually
go.
was watching the Justinian there, the
I
Justinian
remember
the
that.
second.
Yeah, the
It was a very nice
Tremissus.
portrait. I'm not into late Byzantine or Byzantine in general, but that's a beautifully executed portrait.
Was it this one?
Yeah, it was that one. I only went to around, I think, 13 or 1400,
Which is
not
not
anywhere
worth what it
near
went
good.
for. But yeah, very nice. Sort of, I would say, a peak medieval portrait. Sort of encapsulates that era. Just the dress, the hairstyle.
Lovely, and it looks so similar to his, well, I guess not his, but to Justinian the First's mosaic portraits.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the San Vitale portrait, for example. Quite a few similarities.
Yeah, who knows? It could have been a conscious effort too. His
Yeah,
namesake.
emulate, possible, yeah.
Of course, what did you in here? I don't know if you saw. There was no point in watching it anymore. The dreaded mint state. 4 out of 5.
Ugh,
4 out of 5.
yep.
Once mint state came up, it's no point anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
But now looking at the complete opposite, here's a horrendous portrait that looks nothing like any mosaics. Looks like macaroni art, but it's a fun
Ah,
example.
Rome.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
say Roman.
It's a
That's
very
impressive.
very late Rome mint issue. I think the price it went for is actually very fair. I set a max at like 1,500 pretty much, which would have been lowballing to win. I didn't think I would, but yeah, I got blown out of the water. But it's a very rare issue, very nice.
Did the
Cool to see.
Byzantines, was this like did they retake Rome or did they retain control of the city this late? I
So
always
they,
assumed they lost it
well,
pretty early to the Lombards.
no, they held on pretty late.
Interesting.
Well, I think it was kind of wishy washy in terms of who controlled what, but they at least had partial control this late. And there were two more Byzantine coins I was looking at from the Rome Mint as well that I also lost. I think they're underworld coins, which is kind of odd. So they're papal coins that are also Byzantine, and I guess for whatever reason they got cataloged under papal issues. And I was hoping that would get more eyes off of them, but apparently not. So these I also got blown out of the water on. So this one is actually pretty cool. It's the only coin I think of this type in private hands that I'm aware of, and it's from a horde coin, or it's from a horde. This coin, the very first horde that sort of discovered this issue and sort of made the papal connection. That's a paper written by Mr. O'Hara, I think in 1985. But you can see pretty much everywhere this coin illustrated, this coin illustrated. Just a super rare coin, the only one in public hands, and one of the better examples. It started at 1,200. I was hoping that people wouldn't care about it. Obviously, some serious collectors did, and it went up to 9,000, which was sad to see. But it's a cool issue. You've got a sort of abysmal portrait of an emperor on the obverse, Tiberius III holding a spear across his chest, and on the reverse you've got the letters T. I think it's TBRM for Tiberius in Rome. Yeah. So overall, an interesting coin, but it went for a huge amount. Then this coin too ended up just kind of watching. It was a bit out of my budget starting anyway, but a fun issue. I would say as far as these papal issues go, it's got an extremely nice bust. Usually they don't come this nice. And so this is fun just because this would have been issued under the same time period and ruler as this coin. So you can kind of see just how far the style had degraded at this point.
Yeah, certainly charming in its own way. I don't know that I would spend $3,000 on it just because it's not really a focus for me, but I can definitely see why someone would. It's nice.
And I think
It's
too,
historically significant too.
this is kind of I don't know. It has a concrete valuation behind it. I looked at the prices.
Mm.
In 2016, it sold for 3,000. 2020, 3,000. So whoever paid 3,125, they're kind of getting a market deal. Sort of, you know what you're buying, and you probably know what you're going to get back for it. So I feel like with that in mind, it might make it easier to buy a coin like this. But in terms of bang for your buck, 9 millimeters, 0.3 grams, 3,000. The other one's even worse. It's 0.15 grams. You sneeze, it's gonna fly away.
Well, getting to our last auction of the season, I think we'll see that maybe some of these people didn't really get that bad of a, a deal.
What do you mean?
The Greek fraction sale, there were
Oh yes,
some very
yes.
high hammers on some very tiny coins.
Let's go check those out. Actually, was Nomos on Bidder?
I think it is,
It'll be a lot
yes.
easier to sort through prices if we just go to Bidder, because their website is atrocious. Hold on. Here we
I
go.
just
Closed
been
auction.
closed auctions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You scroll down. Nomos. Here we go.
26. There we are.
And I'll just sort by hammer descending. So these are coins I know almost nothing about. So I'm presuming these are high prices, but I hope you know more than I do.
Well, yeah, I don't know too much about fractions in general, but I have some familiarity with some of the general types. The Delphi Trihemiable, I can respect that that one went for more than anything else here, the very first coin there. I actually have, let me pull it up if I can. I have an example of this type, but I paid nowhere near that much for it.
So what makes this so desirable, or the fact that it might go for so much and be justified? Is it just a condition in general for such a small coin?
Well, actually, I'll be honest, this is not the nicest Delphi Trihemiable out there. There was one that sold at NAC, I think it was early last year, for a similar price, 21 or 2,000 francs from memory. It had provenance too, going fairly far back, I think like a naval sale to the 1910s.
Oh wow,
Um, and it's a lovely coin. Let me see if I can pull that one and my example up just for comparison. Because
definitely.
I do think genuinely that the buyer of this sale overpaid quite heavily for most of his coins. That's sort of the sentiment I've heard echoed from uh, collectors who are more into fractions in general and who got blown out of the water in this sale.
And there was one
The
big
coins are
buyer who was
nice.
winning, right, from the bidder, I
Yeah, it
believe.
was one buyer who won, I think, something like 70% of the sale.
Which I mean, then
I've
again,
heard
though,
rumblings that they might be a relatively newer collector based out of China.
hmm,
So yeah, I don't know if there's any truth to that, but definitely someone new entering the arena, and I guess they decided they want to have the whole collection.
although you can
They want to.
imagine, I mean, if money's not an issue, you could pretty much buy a world class collection in one sale. Why not go for it? If overpaying doesn't matter, I can't say I hardly
It's
blame
true.
them.
I guess it depends on your collecting style. I'd feel like that would be too boring. If you just get it all in one go, where's the fun of trying to find an example you like and trying to piece it together bit by bit over time? That's the journey is half the fun for me.
Fair. Do you have those links sent? I can check this out then, if so.
Just pulling them up now.
Okay, cool. But yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't even realize fractionals can go for this much. Here's a nice one, a Kragus. They've got an interesting little tidbit down here. I don't know if that's true. Nomos claiming that because the coin's dyes are so intricate, it must have been a donative to the population from the rulers. Seems
I
a bit
don't know.
far-fetched.
I can't comment on that, but I've seen some fairly speculative things in auction house descriptions in the past. So, not saying Nomos does it exclusively. They all do. There's actually one that does it more than most others.
True.
But yeah, who knows?
But yeah, strong sale overall here. Very strong.
Sorry, it's taken a moment, but the
No
Delphis are
worry.
there.
Okay, cool. All right. Got these lined up. So number one, this
Most
example
recent,
sold
yep.
for 26,000. Exhibit number two, 20,000 at NAC. Let me get the large photos blown up here. And then yours, number three. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say at a glance, NAC's is much better. The reverse
There's a
composition here, it's
few
much more
reasons.
clear.
One is the legend on the reverse. It actually says Delphion,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the Nomos one doesn't even have a legend. Like that's sort of detracts massively, in my opinion, from it. Um, and then the second is just the completeness of the ram on the obverse. You're missing out that front part of the face, and it just
Which
and
adds
the
so much
dolphin too.
character.
And the dolphin, the word Delphus means dolphin, right? So
Mm.
like having the dolphins there is a big part of the draw. It sort of reinforces that it's from Delphi. And yeah, I don't know. Like just look at it looks like it's been cleaned and sort of scratched up and then smoothed up again, the Nomos one.
Mm-hmm.
I look at the ram on the or the goat on the reverse. It just it's a
Looks
I don't know.
gross.
It's disgusting.
I wonder if this is X Trouse nets too.
And then I think if we go in the provenance of these, I'm not sure, but I think I'm fairly certain this was a
So this has
yeah,
got, yeah,
okay, yeah.
1925.
Similar age range, 25, and I think this was 28, so it actually beats it out by a little bit.
Yeah.
And it sold for significantly less. This is what I'm saying. I think it's better to pick and choose. Like whoever bought this got a great deal on an amazing coin. It's
Mm-hmm.
easily the nicest one out there. Whoever picked up the Nomos one recently, I'll be honest, I prefer my own coin to the Nomos one.
Well, plus, the one thing I will say too before we go there, if you look, this is actually a plate coin, the NAC example. I don't know the works too
Yeah,
well, but De Natui, I don't know how you say that. I'm assuming that's French. Anyway, it's
none to you. Yeah.
a plate coin there, and the Nomos one is not a plate coin anywhere, which I would imagine does make a difference.
Well, I'd imagine it's because there were better examples to plate too. It sort of speaks for itself.
Burn.
Well, it's usually true unless the coin is very rare, which these are fairly rare. Even still, usually the best examples get plated, so it's kind of
Well,
a
so
reinforcement there.
also what's interesting here is I noticed that the Nomos example, it's got an incuse reverse. NAC doesn't. With NAC though, no incuse legend, but yours has got sort of a mixture of both, a hybrid. Incuse
Yeah,
reverse with a legend. Is there any sort of theme or categorization of that, or is it just sort of happenstance?
I haven't read into it enough to know. Like, there's definitely a series of these over time, and I think like all three of these are sort of from the earlier series, but I don't know whether the incuse is like it starts with the incuse, and then as you lose the incuse, they become more recent,
I
or
would
if it's
imagine
the other
that's the
way around.
case.
I'd imagine
In
usually
general,
incuses are older, so I guess in that sense, I'd maybe guess that mine is somewhere in between the other two. But the history of these is usually they're thought to have been made right after the Greco-Persian Wars. So right after the Battle of Plataea, the Greeks kick out the Persians, and then they take a whole bunch of loot back with them. They dedicate a significant chunk of that to the Oracle of Apollo at Delphi,
mm-hmm.
and that's turned into these coins. That is the prevailing theory, as I understand it. So
I
these
will.
are actually made from the spoils of war of the Greco-Persian Wars on the Greek side following their victory, at Delphi itself,
I
or
will.
in around the 470s.
That's pretty cool though. Nice history. I was gonna say too. I feel like the RAM here, if you look, it does seem more archaic on the Nomos example. The dates seem to be the same what
Somewhat.
they've listed, but just kind of the eye socket around the mouth, the horn and
Well, I
neck
think the other thing
execution.
is there would have been different people making different dyes, so it's possible you could have a bit of a mix. Because if you look at the tridrams, they're sort of, I think they're a little bit closer to the knack example from memory, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. And those are definitely thought to be from that initial Persian expedition era.
Well, overall, yeah, very interesting. I will say, I mean, I think yours darkly toned might have better surfaces overall. I think the flan's a bit chipped, but in terms of being
Yeah,
scratched or
it's
worn or
not the nicest,
polished,
but it was 1400. It has a legend and full dolphins. Um, and it does look a little bit nicer in hand. It's got that porosity and that, a little bit of porosity on the surface, but in hand it's pretty good.
yeah, I would say sort of Nomos being almost the complete opposite. It looks almost polished here. That silver color is not natural. That looks like it was brushed, which I think is the
Yeah, just the
traction here.
reverse. I just can't get over how it's been scratched to hell. Like you can't even make out the forms anymore.
Yeah, gouged out perhaps even here.
Yeah, yeah, not a fan. It's unfortunate.
Definitely. Well, I would say that kind of speaks to the wholesale though itself in terms of the price you're paying for the quality you get. Nothing against the collector here, but it seems like people were
No, I
drastically
personally, I
overplaying.
think I would have taken a zero off of that hammer and it would have been a lot more fair. I think 2600 is a lot more reasonable than 26,000.
Yeah. Well, I bet that'll make their email list where they have their most successful lots.
You'd hope
Just some
so.
snarky comment.
uh,
This is cool too. Honestly, I don't follow the coins of Athens too much. I feel like it gets pretty boring pretty quickly, but this is pretty neat. I've not seen the early fractionals that much. I feel like this is a wonderful example of that. Sort of that beautiful archaic style, especially the owl here in the reverse. And just the amount of details you have on such a small flan. 9 millimeters, 0.65 gram.
yeah, a little bit less provenance, but it's very beautiful. It's a very well done reverse, and it's in good shape,
Hmm.
unlike our auction setter.
Yeah, nicely toned too. Just scrolling through, definitely some cool fractions. I wonder how long it
Oh,
took
some
for this
very nice
collector
fractions.
to build everything up here. I would imagine a long time.
He did a good job, and I guess he got a fairly significant payoff from it, or
Definitely.
him or his or her heirs, whoever it might have been.
Exciting though. I mean, it can kind of show what patience will do. If you just wait a long time, get some good deals, you can assemble quite the collection, and then hopefully down the road make some money.
Or you could spend 3 million in a single sale.
True. Well, this is neat here. The horse heads. Not seen that before.
Yeah, that's nice. Tarentum. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, yeah, I'd say overall we can look at these sales and see a pretty strong market. We've got on the one hand over at NAC, record-breaking prices, amazing coins as always, gold medallions and whatever else up the wazoo. But I would say an impressive sale as always, which you would come to expect from a feature sale from NAC. We just kind of scratched the surface here of all these sales, but overall I would say it's been a very strong week when all these sales took place for the ancient coin market. You've got lots of wonderful examples coming up, and it would seem that in light of recent events, the market's not been phased, and that it's as strong, if not stronger, than ever.
Yeah, I'd agree with that assessment. Seems to be alive and kicking. Um, Fortunately or unfortunately, I guess, depending on which side of the buying equation you fall. But yeah, some good deals to be had there still, I think.
If the prices keep going up, it won't matter. It's a bubble. Just get out before it pops.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Well, Antoine, thank you for coming on. I appreciate your insight here across all these sales. It was fun to take a holistic look here at the market and just sort of see general trends and talk about some coins.
Yeah, thank you very much. As always, it's been my pleasure.
Definitely. Well, everyone, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment too about what you thought was the best deal we covered and the biggest overpayments. I'm your host, Sam, as always, and until next time.